The Rwandan genocide was a systematic campaign by the Hutu ethnic majority aimed at wiping out each and every member of the minority Tutsi group. The Hutu-controlled government and allied militias slaughtered between 800,000 and 1 million Tutsis before a Tutsi rebel group overthrew them. Over 100,000 Hutus were also killed, including both moderate Hutus killed by Hutu extremists and those killed by Tutsis in so-called revenge killings. The genocide was set into motion by the death of Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana. On April 6, 1994, Habyarimana's Falcon jet was shot down by a missile of unknown origin as he returned from a meeting of African leaders in Tanzania. Government-aligned forces used Habyarimana's death as an excuse to begin a campaign of slaughter they had been planning for some time, and the genocide began on April 7th. It went on for about 100 days. Keep watching to learn more about the Rwandan genocide. Please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps our channel grow and enables us to produce more videos like this one. The split between Hutus and Tutsis arose not as a result of religious or cultural differences, but economic ones. Hutus were people who farmed crops, while Tutsis were pastoralists who tended livestock. Most Rwandans were Hutus. Gradually, these class divisions became seen as ethnic designations. Because cattle were more valuable than crops, the minority Tutsis became the local elite while Hutus were viewed as a peasant class. By the time Belgium took over the land in 1917 from Germany, an ethnic Tutsi elite had been the ruling monarchy for quite some time. German and Belgian rule made the dividing lines between the groups sharper. This divide and conquer strategy meant supporting the Tutsi monarchy and requiring that all local chiefs be Tutsis, turning the Tutsis into symbols of colonial rule for the Hutu majority. Post-independence, the resentment created by colonial divide and conquer bred violence. Seeing as Hutus were a large majority, they handily won the country's first elections in 1961, and the regime that followed was staunchly Hutu nationalist. Intermittent violence between Hutus and Tutsis became a feature of post-independent Rwanda. The Rwandan genocide was a different class of violence altogether from what came before it. It was akin to the Holocaust in that it was a directed, premeditated attempt to eliminate an entire people. The Hutu government had fought a war with Ugandan-based Tutsi rebels, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, from 1990 to 1993. By early 1994 at the latest, many Hutus, including a number of important government officials, had come to the conclusion that the real problem was Rwanda's Tutsi minority. They began organizing armed paramilitary gangs and training them to prepare to wipe out Tutsi civilians. President Habyarimana had agreed to a United Nations enforced peace agreement with the RPF. The missile that shot down Habyarimana's plane shattered that agreement. It still is not known whether Tutsi rebels or Hutu extremists opposed to the peace agreement fired the missile. Regardless, the Hutu ethnic supremacists saw it as a green light to begin their extermination campaign. On April 7th, the killing began. Hutu militias, most infamously the government-backed Interahamwe, went city to city and village to village, slaughtering Tutsis with guns and machetes. The militias were horrifyingly efficient, using a national radio station, Mille Collines, to coordinate the beginnings of the campaign around the country, telling their fellow Hutu that the graves were not quite yet full. The propaganda perpetuated across national radio led the Hutu to kill Tutsis unconditionally. Hutu husbands murdered their Tutsi wives. School teachers killed pupils in their class. The last vestige of safety, hospitals, even became slaughterhouses, where doctors became killers par excellence. At the height of the genocide, an average of 8,000 Tutsis were being killed per day. Unlike earlier mass killings, such as the Holocaust, the international community had advanced knowledge of the impending genocide. Once it launched, they had evidence of where it was going, and still did nothing. Canadian General Romeo Dallaire, who commanded the small UN observer force tasked with implementing the peace agreement, heard the Hutus were planning genocide in January 1994. He informed senior UN officials, but wasn't given any authority to act. Even after the genocide began, and the evidence of slaughter became undeniable, the international community did nothing. The United States actively discouraged the UN Security Council from authorizing a more robust deployment. The UN's inactivity concerning this atrocity caused the genocide to reach shockingly abhorrent levels. General Dallaire is convinced that, with an additional 5,000 troops and a strong mandate from the UN, he could have saved hundreds of thousands. Bill Clinton's regretful lack of commitment in intervening was the driving force behind a renewed dedication to protecting human rights through military forces. Just one day after the start of the genocide, Paul Kagame and his Tutsi rebel forces from RPF engaged in a bold offensive with hopes to overthrow Rwanda's government. In mere days, their efforts were successful. The Hutu-run administration was toppled as Kagame assumed control of its military power, though he kept up appearances by appointing a Hutu president while taking on vice-presidential duties himself. The RPF managed to prevent the genocide from reaching its devastating climax, yet their victory was far from flawless. According to a Human Rights Watch assessment of the campaign, systematic RPF killings were responsible for tens of thousands of Hutu fatalities as part of a revenge-killing campaign. Today, Rwanda is in a much better place. In 2001, laws that prohibited ethnic divisionism were established and codified in the 2003 constitution. This legislation forbade any forms of discrimination as well as divisionist behavior. The state actively promotes Rwandan nationality as the only acceptable identity and asserts that tightly managed political and identity-based discourse is necessary for security. For the past 2 decades, President Kagame has been at the helm of Rwanda. Despite his successful efforts in rebuilding life since the genocide, he's also been linked to various atrocities around the region and is widely criticized for oppressing political dissidents as well as consolidating authoritarian power. In the past decade, Rwanda has seen extraordinary progress. Their life expectancy and HIV rates have both been reduced exponentially, while their child mortality rates are at an all-time low. Additionally, since 2008, Rwanda's economy is thriving, with a soaring 8% growth rate that's making it one of the most appealing African countries to invest in. Nonetheless, Kagame's government has been labeled an ethnic autocracy by his adversaries. With Tutsis only making up 14% of the Rwanda population, most official posts are filled up by Tutsis, particularly in the military. Additionally, Kagame is accused of having subsidized murderous foreign militias like M23 operating in DRC. He may also have had a hand in malicious revenge slayings as well. Perhaps most ominously, a statistical assessment of the risk of state-led mass killing puts Rwanda in the top 15% of countries most likely to see mass killing. Even after almost 3 decades have passed since the genocide occurred in 1994, there remains much cause for concern and vigilance when it comes to protecting Rwanda's citizens from future violence.